Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Alistair.
And I'm Nick.
And in this episode, we will be trying to make friends whilst saving the world in a new comic from DC, Peacemaker Tries Hard. And then we'll be travelling into space with Adam Sandler in Spaceman. But before all of that, Nick, what have you been up to recently?
Well, it's time for one of my occasional music reviews, as the main bit of culture that came out in the last couple of weeks that I've been absolutely vincing is the new Los Campesinos album, All Hell, which came out a couple of weeks ago, I think, as of the release of this episode, and I think has now been number 14 in the UK charts, which is their only top 40 placing, so well done, guys. And this is the 7th record from the band who described themselves, I believe incorrectly, as the UK's first and only emo band. They've been making their songs since the late 2000s, starting off with a sort of twee, jangly indie pop style, and steadily moving as their records went on into a more emotion-riddled, melodramatic, angsty emo style. And yes, this is their 7th record after a 7-year hiatus. I guess they're very much the definition of a cult band, Los Campesinos. Their careers, I don't know, the generic thing to say about Los Campesinos, and as a comics fan, I'm going to go ahead and say it, because this is how I discovered the band. They were very heavily touted by UK comics writer Kieran Gillen in his early work, well, around the time he was doing his early work Phonogram, which was a comic about music, or music as magic. We probably mentioned it on this podcast before. And I think somewhere in the second volume, he has the lead character describe Los Campesinos as a band who are going to be big, and then he sort of stops, and then the lead character says, actually no, they're never going to be huge, but they're going to be really big for some people. And that bit of dialogue has been quoted extensively in music reviews of Los Campesinos albums, because it is more or less what happened. It was an impressively predictive bit of writing, because yes, they have not become huge, but for the people who love them, they are absolutely massive. And yes, the release of a new album has been received duly rapturously by the fans, of which I am one. And it's really good. As you may guess from the title, All Hell, Los Campesinos are a little disappointed at the state of the world. Even by their standards, it's perhaps one of their more, I don't know if I want to say downbeat albums, but it's one of their slightly more angry albums. They are perhaps a little less consumed by the turmoil in their love life, and a bit more concerned with the wider turmoil of the rest of the planet in this particular record. I think is possibly the biggest change. There's slightly more of an external view from a band who are traditionally, I guess, as I suspect a lot of emo music is, slightly inward looking. And maybe it is an album for our times. It's definitely got a good sort of sense of slow burn rage. The one type of song they're doing here that they haven't really done before is this sort of 5-minute slow building epic where they just get steadily more consumed with fury and or emotion at what's going on in the planet. And it's a really good album. I've listened to it many, many times over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to listen to it more. I'm sure eventually I'll burn it out and have to put something else on. But good work, team.
Yeah, I'm glad the album's good and it's well received by you as a big fan. Yeah, I've been listening to a bit of this as well. After we went to see Los Campesinos earlier this year, when they were playing in London, they announced this album, which was nice and well received. Yeah, I've certainly been enjoying Psychic Wound. That's a good song. Was that one of the singles they released in advance?
Yeah, Psychic Wounds was the second of the singles they released. The first one was Feast of Tongues, which is one of the longer, more slow build tracks.
Yeah.
Psychic Wounds was the one they played at the gig.
Yeah, which was good then, and I've been enjoying it on the album. It's good, as you say, definitely reflecting the anger of the times we're living in. That is reflected in the title. They do good songs, and they've got certainly a cult following. But I'm glad that the fans are still turning up and enjoying this music, or enjoying it quite a lot, I guess, if it's actually charted.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps that with sort of cult bands or bands who have a big sort of dedicated fan base. I gather this happens quite a lot with like popular long-running indie bands in the current music industry. They tend to chart in the first week or so from a lot of people buying the physical copies for their hardcore fan collection, because physical copies count for a lot more in the charts than streams. One of them said on Reddit it's like 1,500 streams is one purchase, and so you get all the hardcore fans turning out in the first week and buying it for their collection, and that often catapults them up the chart. And we'll see if they now disappear from the charts in the second week when everyone's already got their copy.
Yeah, and also the serious fans and also people who are like kind of know more about music than just casual listeners know that that it's physical media is where bands make their money, physical media and live performance, whereas streaming doesn't really support bands very much. So a lot of people who really into the music know that it's important, if you want the bands to keep going, it's important to pay to see them live and to buy physical albums. I mean, I try as much as possible to buy the physical media of the bands that I like the most, especially contemporary ones, that are up and coming, that need the money, not so much I guess really popular acts that are probably sorted when it comes to money, like Blur, for example.
Yeah, no, Los Campesinos, I think, at this point I think they said self-managed, on their own record label, and more or less self-funded. So yeah, I feel like they probably do need the money more than Blur.
Yeah. I guess it's an independent outfit, which is good. It gives them the creative freedom to make the music they want to make.
Yeah, no, it's a very lovingly put together album. I think it's very well produced and slick. There's a lot of nice little production moments on it. I think, yeah, it has been 7 years since the last Los Campesinos album, so they've taken their time, but impressively, I think it was actually worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And yeah, we saw them pretty much selling out the Troxy in London, which is a pretty big venue. So certainly, at least in London, there's a large number of fans who poured down to see them live. They've definitely got a reasonable sized following. I kind of put them in the sort of similar category to Levelers, which is they maybe don't do like a huge amount of live performances, and they've got a lot of dedicated fans. So when they do perform live, especially in London, they get like quite a big gathering. And yeah, there's a real sort of sense of occasion and celebration, which is good fun.
Yeah, no, that gig was really good. That gig really did feel like a big event. Like, we're back, it's been a while. Yeah, a celebration of their work so far. They are doing another tour later this year, which will be more focused on the new record, I imagine. Sadly, they're not playing London, and I'm too skint for hotels, so I haven't managed to get tickets for that tour. But next time, guys, next time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be more gigs, and they'll come back to London and do. I'm sure they'll want to do a live version of the album, not maybe playing like the whole thing from beginning to end, but every band seems to do the tour following the release of an album is the one where you hear the most of that album live. It's your opportunity to hear certainly like the album tracks and things like that live.
Yeah, in fairness, they did do an album release show in Kingston the other day, but annoyingly I was out of the country at the time. Otherwise I would have rearranged my schedule to go.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying when it's in Kingston because it's really far away, even though it's still in London. I did that for a band earlier in the year, and yeah, that was just a couple of acoustic songs and then a signing in a record label. I think I spent more than 2.5 hours travelling for about 20 minutes of music, but it was worth it.
Yeah, I think Lost Camp did play a whole hour, but yeah, it's still a bit of a slog. But I would have done it. I would have done it had I not been in Germany. But yeah, no, this is really good to dart back round to the music. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good lyrics and wordy titles. There's a song called To Hell in a Hand Job, which you have to appreciate. And the final track, a sort of gentle acoustic play-out, is deceptively catchy. For some reason, even though there's a whole album of songs with varying levels of slow build shouted choruses or yelled pop-punk choruses, the bit I had stuck in my head for a while after the first couple of listens to the album was the refrain of the very last song. Now, this could just be because I have a very simple mind and can remember only the last thing I heard. But yeah, it's a nice track at the end.
Yeah. No, it's a good album, and I'm glad it's been well received.
Yeah, so yeah, if you like indie, especially, I don't know, doomy, angry, well-made indie, then Los Campesinos album, All Hell, out now. Check it out. And yes, Alistair, what have you been doing in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, so I saw an interesting new film, which is Kinds of Kindness. This is the new film directed by Logos Lathamos. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Greek director who, we discussed his film Poor Things earlier this year, which was very good, and Emma Stone won an Oscar for that. And only a few months later, he's back with another film. This one is absurdist black comedy. It's an anthology film, or if you're very arty, it's a triptych, which is, basically means it's got 3 shortish films. Well, they're kind of like about the length of an episode of a TV show. It's because the whole thing is like over 2.5 hours, so they are relatively long. Yeah, the conceit is you get these 3 sort of related films, but the core cast of 6 actors plays different characters in all the films. So there's some very different relations, different characters, all played by the same kind of core group. A bit more like a play, but in a film. Yeah, it's quite dark. It's like a dark comedy. There's lots of dark comedy. There's just some straight, very dark bits in it, including one scene of sexual violence. So we're definitely on a quite upsetting and unpleasant tone for this one. It's got his signature very weird style, but it's shot in a much more straightforward way. It doesn't have the kind of crazy sets and costumes that Poor Things had. This is more the sort of film that is more set in a version of our world where lots of strange things are going on. If you've seen quite a few of his films, it's much more like The Killing of a Sacred Deer in both sort of tone and content than it is to Poor Things. It's definitely got that dark edge to it, but it's really worth seeing, and it's got a lot of weirdness, and it's an interesting, unusual film, so I would recommend it.
Alistair did offer to let me come with him to see this, but I believe I repeatedly did other things as it sounded like something I wasn't really in the mood for. But I'm glad it was enjoyable. I'm glad it was good. I may one day watch it on streaming, possibly in 3 separate sittings.
Yeah, I mean, this is a film that's very easy to break into 3 chunks. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's got 3 entirely. Well, there is a connection in that there's a character called RMH. You never find out his full name, just his initials, who is in all 3 stories, but he's kind of a minor character. So you can pretty much watch these as like 3 episodes of a TV show. Yeah, like a 3-part TV show, like some of the seasons of Black Mirror or things like that. It certainly means you get toilet break. I mean, there's something I guess about watching them all together is that like kind of the weird atmosphere and the kind of like building tension. It kind of really adds something to it. And each film is one of the things that gets weirder and darker as a character's life falls apart in pretty much all instances, and then eventually there's something dark and unpleasant and very strange happens at the end. I guess which is very similar to again the killing of a sacred deer, that kind of structure in terms of narrative. And there's lots of nods to like, I think, like sort of literature and myth and things like that. So it's quite a dense film that's worth diving into.
Okay, and it keeps up the quality throughout. It's not the case that, I don't know, some of the chunks are much better than the other chunks. Chunks is, of course, the technical movie making term.
Yeah, or the triptychs. There's to be very arty about it.
Trip bits. Carry on.
Yeah. Something along those lines. Yeah, I think they're all good. Yeah, I really like the last one, which is quite. Yeah, it's got this real bizarre dark edge to it. The last one's about this cult that's very controlling and strange, and it follows Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons are people who are in this cult that's led by William Dafoe, and they're kind of searching for the chosen one who can reanimate the dead. Yeah, and there's a lot of weird dark things going on in that one. And so but they're all good in sort of their different ways, and each one builds to a finale that's got something quite unpleasant or quite dark in it, and also usually something that's also quite darkly funny in a sort of weird and disturbing way. Sometimes it's just like, you've seen something so horrible you kind of have to laugh or else you just cry or break down. One of those sort of films.
So is there a lot of kindness in this film? Kinds of kindness?
No, not really.
Okay.
I assume it's some kind of ironic title, or it's a nod to something like that. Yeah, there's lots of weirdness, lots of darkness.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know why it's called Kinds of Kindness.
Okay. Even watching the whole 2.5 hours could get you the answer to that.
No, I'm not really sure. Then again, I didn't get why The Killing of a Sacred Deer was called The Killing of a Sacred Deer until I had to look it up afterwards and be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, maybe I'm just not informed enough about the particular myth that film's referencing. But it's one of those sort of like dense and sort of strange films. It's got this sort of Lynchian quality to it in that the characters are all kind of know what's going on and are kind of like following the sort of set rules of their world, but that's not really explained to you. So their behaviour looks strange from the outside, but kind of makes total sense from their perspective. And there's sort of weird things like cults. There's this one, William Dafoe plays this like very controlling businessman who like runs every aspect of the lives of people he works for, including sending them cards and telling them exactly what time they wake up, what they have for breakfast, when they have sex with their partners. That one's quite strange and dark. There's another one in which Emma Stone's been stranded on an island. She's a marine biologist who gets stranded on an island and then comes home changed in sort of weird and dark ways. Yeah, there's definitely a sort of signature strangeness to it. I don't think no one can really do like kind of the modern weird like Yorgos Lanthimos, and he does have that ability to find a kind of strangeness in the mundane. This film's got quite a lot of that.
It does sound kind of interesting, and one day I might watch it again, as I say, in 3 parts. I just struggle to find the energy to watch 2.5 hours of sad-sounding film on a nice summer day.
Yeah, exactly. But it's got some great performances in it. Really excellent cast. Emma Stone obviously is great. Jesse Plemons is brilliant in lots of stuff. And he's got a substantial role in all 3 of the short films here. So that's interesting. William Dafoe again. Always excellent. Always plays strange and dark characters very well. Margaret Qualley, Hong Chu, Joe Alwyn. They're all great in all of them. And Hunter Schafer from Euphoria as well. So it's got a strong cast and lots of great performances. So there's lots to like here.
No, it's impressive the sheer volume of well-known people he's got for this. Well, I guess, after Poor Things and a couple of other recent successful films, he's doing well. Now is the time, I suppose, to do his possibly slightly indulgent projects with a surprisingly high-value cast and high budget.
I guess he's got a lot of creative freedom following on from The Favourite and Poor Things. But the good thing about this is it has been well received, certainly with the kind of arty film critic circle. People seem to really like it. I don't know how much it's made in terms of box office. It seems to have done relatively well for itself.
Doesn't sound like this is something you make to rake in the box office cash.
No, I guess not. And I can imagine, although I actually don't know, that people like Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons aren't asking top dollar for this. This is more of something you do for creative integrity, and they are great. And these are the sort of films that maybe won't make a huge amount of money, but I'm sure we look back on as like an artistic achievement and an important milestone in the careers of these actors. So good job all round.
Okay, and first main review today, it is Peacemaker Tries Hard. That's with an exclamation mark, in case I didn't get that across. This is a recent comics miniseries by Kyle Starks and Steve Pugh about the character Peacemaker, best known, I think, at this point for being immortalised in his own TV show, played by John Cena, who finds himself at a bit of a loose end after being let go from the Suicide Squad and adopts a cute dog in a bid to give his life purpose after finding himself feeling a little bit mocked and dejected and struggling to work out how to achieve his cause of bringing about peace through extreme violence. And then, his dog is kidnapped by a disembodied brain, and the brain's sidekick, a French monkey, and then this is used to blackmail Peacemaker into going on a series of increasingly strange fetch quests, and the story continues in that vein. So yes, we have read this miniseries. Alistair, what did you think of it?
So, I didn't realise that Peacemaker in the comics was so much of a comedy idiot. Or I don't know if this is a version of the character from the comics that's kind of been done to bring the character in line with what we know from the TV show and the film. Because, this feels very much like the Peacemaker you get, especially the TV show that you mentioned before, and the in the film, in that it's kind of, he's very much sold as like comedy doofus who gets things wrong and kind of screws things up quite a lot. But on that basis, it's very entertaining and very funny. It kind of feels like an episode of a sort of action sitcom, in that it's got a sort of narrative arc of he tries to save the world, but also he's just feeling lost and alone and no friends, and tries to kind of rectify that, and everything he does ends up sort of backfiring in his face. I mean, this could have quite easily been an episode of The Venture Brothers or Futurama or something like that. So it is funny, and I found myself laughing quite a lot. So definitely thumbs up for this one.
Yeah, no, this is good. It knows exactly what it is, which is, a fun action comedy about a sort of violent underdog idiot, and it succeeds. I think the goal here from DC Comics is to provide something that people can just roll straight out of the Peacemaker TV show into. Like, there's very few, there are a few, but a lot of the characters in this are characters who were either in either the Suicide Squad or Peacemaker, or are quite well known. Or, for some of the sillier DC characters, they're introduced or made fairly straightforward, like, again, the brain and the French monkey. So I think this is definitely meant to be providing something that, TV show fans can just roll into. I mean, there's definitely effort being made to both write the character a bit like his TV counterpart and to make him look a lot like John Cena.
Yeah, that's what I noticed as well. It's very much like, the exact same design for the character.
I too am not a specialist in Peacemaker appearances prior to the release of this comic and the TV show and film, but this is definitely a post-TV show version of Peacemaker who is meant to be something for the people who liked the TV one. And I think it does do a good job in capturing that vibe. It doesn't have quite the sort of... I think it's possibly going a bit further with the comedy and a bit less with the attempts to provide emotional catharsis than the TV show did. The TV show, as a lot of James Gunn things do, was very keen on both making you cry as well as making you laugh. Whereas Peacemaker Tries Hard, I think, has a sort of a nice feel-good vibe, but it is, I think, trying harder to make you laugh.
Yeah, I guess that's why it reminded me of, things like Venture Brothers or Futurama, that kind of riff on superheroes and action comics and action TV shows and things like that. But and it's got that kind of sitcom-y feel to it. And that I kind of was aware on some level that it's all probably going to work out fine in the end, things like that. But there's lots of silliness along the way. I like the fact that they've clearly either gone through the list of DC characters to find the daftest and weirdest ones they possibly could, or they've created some new characters daft and weird. I particularly enjoyed the Red Bee, who's a superhero whose power is that he controls one bee, like not a whole swarm of bees, which would be pretty badass, but just one bee, which is just hilarious in and of itself.
The Red Bee, I think, is a niche superhero, although I think they are very much playing up the sillier side of the character here. But to be fair, there is a... I'm literally Googling this live, but yes, he did exist in DC Comics in the 1940s. So, they have brought back an actual old character here.
Which makes sense, because the character is an old guy in this comic, and also he has a a tragic and disturbing backstory from the Second World War. Yeah, so it all makes sense, I suppose, if he's a character from the 40s. Yeah, and I like the sort of flashback to the World War II era. But yeah, it was just quite a silly character. Yeah, there's a general who's a master of weapons but is really, really old and thus has all the frailties of an old person and generally just likes to eat pie in peace. That's quite funny. Yeah, the brain in a jar. That was funny. I quite like Teenage Deadshot.
Deathstroke, yeah.
There was Deathstroke, yeah. A teenage clone of a badass superhero, supervillain who just behaves like a teenager and like a moody teenager. So yeah, that was particularly funny as well. So yeah, there's each like character, they turn up and they have their like little comedy moment. There's always like every character's got something daft or silly about them that's revealed quite quickly. So yeah, you kind of know where you are with each character, and there's a lot of the comedy is very well observed, so it's good fun.
Yeah, and a lot of it's got this sort of dark comedy vibe of Peacemaker just wants to have a nice life and friends, but because he's a slightly strange, violent man, he always does it in this really weird way, and it's always oddly heartwarming, yet also just kind of somewhere between disturbing and silly. Like the bit where he takes teenage Deathstroke into his home and helps him find happiness by introducing him to porn. It's like, sure, absolutely.
Bizarre VHS porn that he found in the forest.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is strange. Yeah, I like also there's a group of unionized supervillain construction workers. Just a lot of bizarre things they seem to have dug up.
Yeah. Carl Starks is a writer. He's also a cartoonist. He does draw some of his own stuff as well, whose work I have read before. And yeah, he's very funny. He had a comic called Rock Candy Mountain about the underground culture of homeless people in the United States, which was, again, sort of very funny in a sort of darkly sad way. And yeah, he's done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah. The writing is on point here because it's not particularly long, but yeah, it does have like this sort of complete narrative arc, introduces the character. I guess there's a lot of stuff that's would be very familiar to you if you've seen the TV show or the film, like the explosives in the back of the neck is like another like part of it. Yeah, and a lot of characters that turn up look very, very similar to they do in the film. Like his boss, is it Waller?
Amanda Waller, yeah.
Yeah, Amanda Waller, that's it. Yeah, she's done to look exactly like in the film and things like that. So yeah, I guess this is an easy jumping on point for people who kind of got their lore from the film and the TV show, as I did. And also people, I guess, who appreciate James Gunn's silly and violent sort of tone.
Yeah, I think it's a good balance because it does feel like it's aimed at and should appeal to, as we said earlier, people who liked the TV version. But it also doesn't feel like it's a boring or slavish adaptation. It does feel like there's actually a story here and it's got its own sort of slightly sillier tone, but I think it should still hopefully appeal to those people.
Yeah, well, it definitely does as someone who's, this is my first reading of Peacemaker comics. So yeah, and it definitely, ideally pitched to someone like me, who's seen the TV, the screen media, as a place to jump onto, Yeah, and I guess it's kind of the story is basically like he wants to save his dog, which is the only thing that seems to show genuine affection to him. Which is kind of a nice little, like, I don't know, easy motivation.
Yeah, because obviously Peacemaker is a maniac, but because he's just so looked down on as somewhere between weird, disturbing, or just a loser by basically everybody he meets. He's just this sort of constant hangdog, stomping around going, I sometimes start to feel like nobody really likes me. Until he meets this dog who he names Bruce Wayne, because he looks like he's wearing a little tuxedo. And Bruce Wayne is, I guess, one of the most famous rich people in the DC universe. And also just happens to be Batman. But obviously Peacemaker doesn't know that. Which does lead to the inevitable one misunderstanding joke, where Peacemaker calls up Amanda Waller to tell her that Bruce Wayne has been kidnapped. But yeah.
Which is, funny in and of itself, And and the dog, there's like a cute dog plot line. It's accessible and things like that. I mean, there's several points I think in the comic Peacemaker's referred to as like a blunt object, which is used when something needs to be whacked, or something like that, which I think is a fairly fitting description.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, a lot of the vibe is in the title, sort of Peacemaker Tries Hard, ! That's why you like him. That's why he still works as a protagonist, because he just wants to be liked and useful and good. He tries so hard, and yet he's so dumb. Yeah,
and they keep also, again from especially the TV show, the fact that like his dad is just an awful monster. So whatever you feel about Peacemaker, you can't help but feel some sympathy for him because, he just has such a horrible father. So, which is, again, it's like a very efficient piece of characterization and gets you on side with this guy who is also a violent maniac.
Yeah, obviously you could make a version of Peacemaker which is dark and Punisher-esque, but I can see why this version has taken off more because it's more interesting than that.
I feel we've got a lot of media of all forms, comics, TV show, films, games, that kind of really dig into the disturbing dark side of a kind of vigilante. Everything from recent Batman media, Taxi Driver, Dead Man's Shoes, all of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good things there as well. But I guess maybe in these dark times, people are in search of a more light-hearted tone. I know there are lots of people who take these characters very seriously who don't like James Gunn's tone. Now he's in charge of all DC films, I think. So we'll see what he does and how people respond to that. But I like the tone, and I found this generally funny. And I found his Peacemaker TV show and film funny as well. So I'm on board.
Yeah, no, same. I'm interested to see how the James Gunn tone will work applied across the board. But I'm assuming there's going to need to be some variants. But the Peacemaker version of James Gunn's tone, I enjoy a lot. And as we've said several times now, if you liked that, you'll probably like this.
Cool.
Yep. It's very good. I don't know if it lends itself to hours of in-depth discussion. Peacemaker Tries Hard. It's very straightforward, but it's very good at the straightforward thing it does.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's just a really nice bit of media, which I enjoyed reading. Yeah, and it made me laugh on the tube, so that's a high bar to clear.
Risking public humiliation.
Yeah. Well, also, you turn the page, or because I read panel by panel, you have no idea what's coming next, and sometimes you'd flip to the next panel and there'd just be something very silly on it. Which catches you by surprise and makes you laugh. So yeah, which is that's what it's aiming at, and that's what it achieves. So yeah, on that basis, it's good stuff.
Yeah, no, for this I can definitely see the appeal of panel by panel, because being able to get the next silly panel as a complete surprise would work pretty well. Okay, and last up today, it's Spaceman, a film that came out earlier this year, directed by Johan Venk, starring Adam Sandler as a spaceman, trapped alone in a spaceship on a long mission to the other side of Jupiter, unable to do anything as his marriage falls apart back on Earth. But never mind, because he's got a large spider that lives in his spaceship who he can talk to about his feelings. And that is the entire film. We have both seen it. Alistair, what did you think?
So this film has quite a lot of nods to highbrow space-based sci-fi, clearly influenced by 2001, Solaris, High Life, even Night Flyers, which I really liked and no one else seemed to watch, but I thought it was good anyway. But yeah, this film is just not as deep as those films are. What it lacks is it didn't kind of capture the wonder and sort of terror of space, which, like I say, films like 2001, especially in Solaris, things like that, are good at capturing the sort of awestruck power and terrible beauty of the vast indifference of the cosmos. And partly because this film, although it's set in space, it's just very focused on the relationship between Adam Sandler's Spaceman character and his wife, played by Carey Mulligan. And their relationship is just fairly standard character drama. It's just a sort of domestic drama about a marriage falling apart, which, I feel that it didn't quite go together or work well. So I can see what it was aiming at, but it definitely missed that.
I too did not like the film. I think a while ago we covered the movie Foe, starring Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal, and I moaned for some time, but it felt like it was trying to be a sort of lofty, emotionally cathartic sci-fi along the lines of Arrival, but unfortunately failed and ended up just being slightly dull. And I'm basically going to deliver the same review here, except instead of slightly dull, I'm going to say very, very dull. Because, I found it quite hard to get through. I was kind of into it for the first 10-15 minutes when I thought we were headed for some Arrival-esque, pretentious, emotionally cathartic sci-fi, because I do like that sort of thing when done well. But like a lot of slower, more pretentious forms of art, the trouble with that is it's a bit of a high-wire act, and if you fuck it up, you fall to your death and produce a very, very boring film, which is what they've done here. Unfortunately, as Alistair kind of already said, the emotional depth available, there just wasn't that much to it. A lot of his therapy chats with the spider were incredibly shallow and basic. It was a very much, listen to the CGI spider recite basic Instagram life advice. I don't know how many times I could listen to it. The CGI spider tell Adam Sandler that he should be nicer to his wife. As you may be getting, I did not enjoy the film.
No, I mean, it's not got the depth of a Kubrick film or a Tarkovsky film, and that's kind of the central flaw of it. Because there's not really much else going on. It is like a sci-fi film that puts personal and interpersonal conflict ahead of extrapersonal conflict. It's a bit of a stereotype I think, sort of unfair stereotype that like sci-fi is all about extrapersonal or environmental conflict, things going bang and boom, people fighting, alien invasions or machines or something like that. And this film, obviously it's much more 2001 than Star Wars, but it is just a standard relationship drama, and it's quite long, and it just takes a while time to tease out the fairly obvious thing, which is that like Adam Sandler blasted himself into space for a year, and that's obviously put strain on his marriage. I was kind of waiting for it to go to something deeper.
Yeah.
But it never really went there. I mean, he had a bit about his like childhood, that like he had a bit of a traumatic childhood and things like that. It's quite basic characterization. I was kind of like, the point of the film is literally like he's run away from his wife into space while she's pregnant, and that's obviously just leaving to break down in their marriage, which I was kind of waiting for it to get to something more interesting or more profound than that, but it never really does.
Yeah, I mean, I've just watched all 4 seasons of Full Mankind, which, funnily enough, does also explore at great length the issue of the effect that one member of a marriage disappearing into space has on the relationship. And pretty much every episode of Full Mankind, all 40 of them, is better than this film.
Yep, fair enough.
I'm
not seen For All Mankind, but like I can imagine it is.
I've told you to watch it many times. Please do. But anyway, I mean, I don't know. I'll halt my complaining for a few seconds. As I say, for the first 10-15 minutes, I thought I might be able to enjoy this. The vibe is interesting. It's got a sort of slow, thoughtful thing going on. The actors, especially Adam Sandler, are certainly trying. If the screenplay had contained a bit more actual insight and a bit deeper characterization, and the relationship had just had a bit more meat to it to get into, I could imagine a world in which this could have worked. It's based on a novel, I believe, Spaceman of Bohemia, by Jaroslav Kalfar. Apologies for butchering that name. And, I can imagine a novel might be good. If you have a decent grasp of characterization, you probably could write a good novel with this premise. But this film is not it. I do kind of always want to read the novel to see what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good elements here that I feel like could have worked. Like Adam Sandler doing a dramatic performance. It's interesting, something slightly different for him. It's even different to him being in like Uncut Gems, which was, I can see why that's both sort of comedy and dramatic. It's quite interesting to show his range. I mean, like for a lot of the film forgot that I was watching the same Adam Sandler who's in Happy Gilmore. That is quite surprising and, an interesting in of itself. Carey Mulligan, she's good in almost anything. There's, again, quite a weak character here. Paul Dano voicing the Spider. He's an interesting actor and can do good performances. There's a soundtrack from Max Richter. He's done some great film soundtracks, some of my favourites, including the soundtrack to Waltz with Bashir. So all the elements are here. It's just like, as I said, I think of some other films before, possibly Foe as well. It's kind of the whole thing adds up to less than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, the synth soundtrack, again, it's the sort of thing I've enjoyed in other films, but I actually found slightly annoying by the time I was halfway through this. I don't know why. The noise just didn't seem to really coalesce with the film in the right way. It was honestly just became an annoying noise being played over the film. Maybe I was just in a bad mood at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, it's a good soundtrack, it's all right, but it's like, it's not Ligeti's in 2001 Space Odyssey, which is like a completely disturbing, strange and alien piece of music that really gets across the vastness of space, the cruel indifference of the universe, and the bizarreness of alien cosmological phenomena. It's just like I can see exactly what they were shooting at, but they really didn't get there. Like, kind of like a rocket that's been miscalculated and is shot way past the moon and just rocketed off into space.
Yeah, this is the sort of media I have sometimes described as an interesting failure. Although in this case, I honestly feel bad using the word interesting to describe it. I mean, the thing is, like, we just covered Peacemaker Tries Hard. Peacemaker Tries Hard knows exactly what it is and achieves it. Peacemaker Tries Hard has a joke in which Peacemaker announces that he would eat a bucket of poop to achieve peace. Yeah. Peacemaker Tries Hard is not big or clever, but nor is it trying to be. This, unfortunately, is trying to be big and clever and comes nowhere near.
It ends up as dull. Yeah, exactly. Like I say, it's just trying to be another Solaris or High Life, but it just doesn't have the chops to do that. Which is quite disappointing. I mean, it kind of builds up to the ending when the ship encounters this cosmological phenomenon that's appeared outside Jupiter, and the ending, I mean, really reminds me of the ending of Night Flyers, which again did this sort of thing just much better. It really got across this bizarre and terrifying nature of something strange that's come out of space that we don't really understand. Is it alive? Is it alien? Is it God? Is it something, something like that? It's, again, 2001 is very, very good at that. But and it's kind of wraps things up in a neat way. But I was waiting for that moment, and it kind of almost gets there, but not quite, of like the kind of the wonder and terror of space, which is what you signed up for, and a sort of space-based sci-fi movie, especially one that's it's not a Star Wars dogfights in space. This is more of a 2001, the wonder, the terror, the beauty, the coldness. But yeah, again, I can see where it's going, but it just doesn't quite get there.
Yeah, no, again,
it's disappointing.
For All Mankind is very good at that, sort of the tenuous nature of human life in space, the fact that one tiny mistake and you're fucked. Yeah. That's what you want from this sort of film, or one of the things you might want from this sort of film.
Yeah, and the sort of screaming indifference of the universe, that we are this like one very, very fragile sort of like drop of life on this kind of tiny rock in the midst of a universe that is vast, like destructive, but also like just utterly indifferent to our existence. And yeah, you want something that loops you round, and at the end geeks you back to like the universe is cold and indifferent, but there is this one like grain of beauty in the whole universe, so we should cherish that and protect it. And things like that, this tiny little fragile rock that we all live on, and value things like human connections and lives and love and things like that. And it's quite lofty, and space is the perfect sort of medium to explore that sort of thing. And obviously you can throw in like bizarre aliens or like creatures. Is it God? Is it an alien, crazy alien thing? What is it? Yeah, all this stuff is good, but like I just got to the end and kind of felt that like, well, I guess I shouldn't run away from my wife. So I feel that's what we've all learned from this. She might be upset by that.
Yeah, your wife might take it personally if you vanish into space for a year. Yeah, but I don't know. I always feel bad just kicking these things for ages, but yeah, didn't particularly enjoy this. So
yeah, so this is one to give a pass.
Yeah, there are better similar films to watch. We've mentioned some of them. Do those things instead. Read Peacemaker Tries Hard instead.
Yeah, and watch Night Flyers. That was good. I liked it. Why did they not make more of it?
Yeah, that too. Do that. I haven't even seen that, but I'm sure it's better.
That's all we have time for in this episode. If you have enjoyed this episode of Moderate Fantasy Violence, then you can subscribe in your podcatcher of choice. And while you're there, you can leave us a review to help other people find out about the show. You can also visit our website, moderatefantasyviolence.com, where you can find past episodes of the podcast, bonus audio content, and written pieces by Nick and myself.
You can also follow us on social media apps, such as Twitter and Blue Sky, where we are MFV Podcast, and Facebook, where I believe we are Moderate Fantasy Violence. See you there. And you can also follow me. I am Nick Bryan on Blue Sky, Nick MB on Twitter, nickbryan.com on Instagram, and if you search Nick Bryan on a lot of other apps, I may well pop up. Come and hear about my comics.
You can find more from me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky by searching for Alistair Ball. You can find more of my writing at redtrainblog.com and find my theatre reviews at everythingtheatre.com. You can also join us here in 2 weeks' time for another episode of Moderate Fantasy Violence, where we will be taking place in a mismatched buddy team-up action adventure in Deadpool and Wolverine, and then we will be engaging in some medieval warfare with dragons in House of the Dragon Season 2. Join us in 2 weeks' time to find out what we thought of those. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.